Obviously, we know Israel conducted what they call Operation Rising Lion, which lasted from about June 13th to June 24th. President Trump, of course, in the United States, instituted Operation Midnight Hammer, conducted in conjunction with Israel, which was an attack directly on Iran's uranium enrichment facilities. So let's go through a little bit of the money line, a little bit of the stats on those. So we're told that Operation Rising Lion, this was this massive preemptive strike on Iran. 200 aircraft dropped more than 330 munitions from the Israeli Air Force on 100 targets. This destroyed mainly those nuclear facilities and mainly those targets there, Natanz, Fordo, Isfahan, but also conducted massive assassination or decapitation strikes using drones all across Iran, particularly within Tehran itself, targeting military bases and senior commanders. We're told that all in all, the death toll is anywhere between the low end of 224 to a high end of 974 fatalities, with this mix of military and scientists associated with the nuclear program of Iran. Israel, of course, has claimed to neutralize Iran's near-term nuclear threat. Iran, of course, as we know, retaliated with massive missile and drone attacks on Israeli soil, particularly targeting Tel Aviv and some military areas as well, many of which were intercepted by elements of the Iron Dome and other implements of Israel's very advanced high-tech air defense. Although the United States was also involved with THAAD, those terminal high-altitude air defenders with those air interceptor missiles. The question, of course, being the price of those air interceptor missiles and the ability to continue use of them given their low number of the munitions. This is also one of the reasons that we saw just a few days ago. Ukraine had pointed out that there was a halt of Patriot missile systems delivered to Ukraine, and most believe this was due to their use defending not only Israel's assets and Israeli facilities, but also American facilities across the Middle East in this response by Tehran to Operation Midnight Hammer and the attack on the U.S. airbase at Al Udeid in Qatar. So for the first time ever, to get into Midnight Hammer, for the first time ever in history, the United States military conducted military strikes within Iran. This is the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy joint offensive. These strikes on Iranian territory during this 12-day war between Israel, the United States, and Iran. The main targets, of course, were the uranium enrichment plants at Natanz and Isfahan, and then the 14 bunker-busting bombs, 2 of which were at Natanz, and the rest of which were targeted at Fordo, that site deep within the mountains south of Tehran. President Trump had stated that the sites were obliterated. U.S. intelligence agencies also concluded that they were seriously and heavily damaged, likely delaying and setting back Iran's near-term nuclear program. Iran themselves confirmed serious damage to the Fordo facility. Notably, one of the attacks that occurred by Israel just after Operation Midnight Hammer was this attack on Evin Prison in Tehran on June 23rd, so one day later, which was an attempt, many believe, to have prisoners and criminals released out into Iran in hopes of sparking a regime change. And Iran confirmed that 56 Artesh military members, including generals, and 41 IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps personnel, were killed, including Brigadier General Nemati, who killed in separate Israeli strikes. Iran's supreme leader advisor has criticized the United States and Israel in response to all of this, calling any potential nuclear talks deceptive. President Trump coming in on June 24th at the end of all of this and instituting a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, brokering it and bringing this pause to full-scale hostilities. So some of the implications there: obviously, nuclear setback for Iran, U.S. and Israeli strikes inflicting significant damage to their nuclear ambitions and to their nuclear program. One assessment, of course, is there a risk of escalation? Absolutely. Should either side breach the ceasefire deal, many believe, whether through direct reciprocal strikes, proxy attacks, cyber attacks, which could include threats to the United States with critical infrastructure, or even domestic terror warnings going through September. Obviously, September 11th, the key date there, could suggest a sustained cycle. One of the main threat that we're hearing, of course, as well, is a humanitarian and refugee crisis. It's estimated that 100,000 civilians fled from Tehran during these strikes. And the question is, are they staying in different places within the massive country of Iran itself, or will they flee to neighboring countries or perhaps to Europe, as we saw during the Syrian civil war? And as well, one of the big takeaways of all of this is that Tehran has suspended cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency and halted visits to bombed sites and threatened further consequences in cooperation, saying that they believe the IAEA is now completely controlled by the West, and they do not believe it to be objective. So, for President Trump and for others, the goal now is consolidation of the ceasefire. So consolidate the ceasefire, maintain this Trump-mediated truce, obviously monitoring for violations, but using any domestic, diplomatic, or financial pressure, economic pressure to suppress any threat of escalation. Obviously, in a situation like this, an increase of surveillance, satellite, recon on nuclear sites, military command nodes, proxy groups to rapidly detect any reconstitution efforts or emerging threats or emerging escalations, calibrate deterrent strategy. And this is, of course, U.S. posture within the region. With so many U.S. bases that are nearby within striking range, the force protection level is going to need to remain high. And that also includes monitoring of the Strait of Hormuz itself, with a variety of reports that have come out saying that Iran did at some points load sea mines. The IRGC personnel were located loading sea mines onto various ships that could have been used very quickly overnight to mine the Strait of Hormuz to block, again, 20% of the world's oil, the world's petroleum flowing through the mouth of the Persian Gulf. This key node, this key choke point of infrastructure for the sea lanes, and obviously goes towards all of the key risk for any international global power. Looking around the Middle East a bit larger, we also see President Trump calling for, and says that just a few days ago, he instituted a 60-day ceasefire between Israel and Gaza, the ongoing conflict there that's been happening since October 7th, 2023, with Gaza fatalities in estimates ranging from the low tens of thousands to the high tens of thousands, with more than 90% of the 2.3 million population of Gaza displaced. Among 50 hostages remain within Gaza, about 50% of that, so 25 living, 25 unfortunately seem to be deceased as of this point. President Trump will be meeting Netanyahu on July 7th, and certainly we'll hear more about the ceasefire there